Right then, I'm live, and it's Wednesday. No, Christ, it's Thursday. So, Thursday. Wow, where's the week gone? So much stuff happening. I'm a bit discombobulated. That's a great word, by the way. I want you all to use it. Discombobulation. And I know Friska, who's coming on, she'll know all about that word, dealing with some of the people that she's been dealing with. But the reason I'm discombobulated is because we've just had a very beautiful email that's come through from the Starlight Children Foundation with a video that they made thanking us for the work that we've done, and it's almost brought me to tears, to be honest. It's just one of those things when you get it, and I'll tell you why. It's because when you wake up in the morning and you go to work doing what you do and what you love, you obviously found your purpose. I feel like we do that every day, and I know the guys in the team do the same thing, and it just feels good. And when you get validation from people that what you're doing is making a difference, it just, honestly, words cannot express. And I'm going to invite Friska to come on in a minute, because the reason I want to do this is because I'm proud of what she's done for a start, but I think there's so much value that she can teach everybody about taking what is your current skill and turning it into something that's massive value for everybody in a market that whatever market it is you're working in. Friska's done this in the change space, and what she's created for me, when I heard about it, I just thought, wow, that's taking all of your knowledge, all of your skill, and making something that can be of use to somebody else. Perfect. If everybody can learn how to do that, you know what, bugger it. Let me just bring her in, because I think Friska. Can you actually hear me when I'm talking?
I can. What an introduction! Jeez.
I just thought, what's really fascinating for me is I did exactly the same thing as what you've done, and this is why I think we gel. Why we resonate, because maybe 4 years ago, when I sat down and I took my little pen and I wrote down 5 things that I'm really good at, 5 things that I really love, and I brought them together. And that's what this is there. This is my 20 years in sales, seeing where the gaps and the problems were, and the past 4 or 5 years in the charity space, understanding what the problems were, and bringing the two together. And gee whiz,
you've merged your passion and your purpose, and now look at you. Yeah, it's brilliant.
Yeah, you wake up honestly, when I say I wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning, like, excited, I'm not joking. Because it's not work. It doesn't feel like work. It feels like what you're doing is. So tell me so you've been in the change space for so long, and again, we're unscripted. We don't have any plan here. This is like a complete off the cuff conversation.
Yep.
You've been in the change space for a long time, and the market has changed. Not only has the market changed, but what we've just seen with COVID. This is the way I see it: is a complete closing ceremony of the Industrial Revolution.
Yep.
And what that's done to business is it's made them go, shit, what do I do now? And we saw it, right? We saw all of these companies going, oh, how am I going to work from home? Oh, well, you've had 20 years to sort that out because the internet's been available, but you haven't done it yet. And then all of a sudden they're panicking because they don't know how to remotely work from home. They've got security issues. You've got blah, blah, blah. Companies don't know how to keep morale going. All this stuff that is your space. And you've been trying to teach these people how to do this for God knows how long.
Nearly a decade now. Yeah. So it's been a long time. Yep. They often think that it's a movie. It's Field of Dreams. They're Kevin Costner. We'll just implement it and people will magically use it. But no, they're scared. It means they're going to be automated out of a job. And you got to remember, the more senior someone gets, the higher their fear of looking stupid and fear of failing, which is why you need even more change management to bring older people on board with a shift to the status quo.
Is there this permafrost layer of executives that don't want change because they're scared of it failing and them losing their job and them not being able to pay the school fees?
Yes, and I think it's usually that middle layer, because not only are the top echelon asking them to change very quickly. They haven't made sense of it first, and we're also asking them to lead their teams through it. And so it's a double whammy for them, and that's usually why they're more resistant. And people resist change for a number of reasons. The first is, yes, definitely loss. They are fearing the loss of protection, power, prestige, or position, right? The 4
Wow.
Ps. And the organization may have historically a really bad history of managing change. So if they did it really poorly in the past, they don't want to go through it again. They've probably got PTSD, or they think, or they don't see the upper layer visibly supporting it and talking about it. So why are they going to give it any attention? It doesn't make sense.
Right.
And they may think that it means it's more work for them. And so they naturally resist.
Let's look at what that PTSD looks like, because give us an example where, you know, a company's failed in their trans. I mean, we've got all the anecdotal ones of you know, Kodak failing because they didn't adapt to digital quick enough. But give us an example of what you've seen in the market where a company's that they've failed miserably with that change.
In the current, let me talk about the biggest ever corporate merger in history, which failed. Do you know who I'm talking about?
No.
It cost $108 billion. It's AT&T and Warner. So it was supposed to be a marriage made in corporate heaven, but because they underestimated the impact of the change, the chairman himself cited change management as the reason why all that money went down the toilet.
Wow.
Yeah. Companies that have, I wouldn't say they've failed to adapt the change now, but they haven't changed their leadership style to lead in this, you know, digital 2.0 world we find ourselves in.
So who's
right?
who's to blame there? You've just busted $100 billion and thrown it down the toilet. Who's at fault?
Everyone's doing the finger pointing.
I mean,
so
surely
AT&T says it's Time Warner's. Time Warner says it's this person. So,
but
yeah.
the CEO signed it off. Surely he should be to blame.
Yeah, you'd think so.
If something happens on we saw it with some of the banks. If something happens on the watch of the board, and the CEO has to step down, and the board have put that CEO in, surely the board has to go.
Yeah. I don't know whose head rolled for that one. Yeah.
Wow. So that was a merger that never took place. Spent a lot of money, and what was the learning from it? What did they take away from that?
That change management was severely underestimated. They didn't realize the clash of cultures would ultimately result in their demise. And closer to where you're traditionally from, your neck of the woods, in the UK, the NHS, the biggest ever public computer system was disbanded, and it cost $16 billion because there was ineffective communication, stakeholders were disengaged, and it resulted in contractual disputes.
And this is really stuff that could be avoided if they had joined your course and understood what to do, pretty much.
No shit, Sherlock. Change does not happen organically. You know, people like so many of my friends have lost their jobs, their contracts have been cut. But look, I don't know if you know, but according to best-selling author Dan Pink, says we spend 24 minutes of every hour trying to change something. Someone's opinions, someone's behaviors, maybe even our own, right? But if you read, no matter what study you read, whether it's Harvard Business Review, whether it's McKinsey, whether it's Deloitte, the failure rate is around the 80% mark. So clearly what you're doing now is not working. And so if you want a different outcome, you have to take a different course of action.
It's really interesting. You know, we've just been sat with our marketing team who are helping us with some messaging. A company called Blurt, very good, very cool guys, Stuart and the team. And they're really helping us with the value creation of what we're doing. Because we know that on the one side of the marketplace, we've got vendors, the biggest vendors on the planet that are loving the meetings. But what is the value to the executives? And so we're trying to work all that out so we can really scale up the executives. And what's coming out is really quite profound in the fact that, you know, we're helping them save time. We're helping them become better leaders. Because by creating these meetings, they're spending less time wasted with meetings that don't need to happen. So our whole point of being is to eliminate those pointless meetings from the planet. Get them off the.
Yep.
And we won't rest until pointless meetings are eliminated. And
Yep.
that's a great purpose to go, because we all know that there's a lot of execs wasting a lot of time in a lot of meetings
Yep.
that they don't need to be in. Is that it? I mean, is
Mhm.
that the change process that needs to happen? Is it the committee-based opinions that are causing the problems? Because, you know, leadership for me is not about a committee-based decision.
Yeah, I think a single point of accountability is often lacking. Yeah, for sure.
Right.
Mm.
So tell us about what you've done, because, you know, like I mentioned, brought my two things together, and we've created this way to make life a little bit easier with meetings. And, you know, the ending of the Industrial Revolution is brilliant, because these meetings are happening, you know, remotely, virtually, whatever now. And I know that's forcing a lot of people to rethink leadership. It's forcing a lot of people to understand, you know, how to manage remote workforces. But it's also helping people understand, well, a lot of people that lost their jobs have realized that they've got to now go and work for themselves.
Mm.
And that's a scary trick. But
It is very scary, yes.
and what you've just done is, I think, a lot of value to everybody. So tell us how you went from taking this knowledge and the skill that you've got to what you're about to do.
Okay, well, the C word, right? It's demonstrated the global impact of not managing change well. We've changed the way we work, the way we lead, the way we parent, the way we learn. So our lives have been totally upended and undergone significant change. It's happening faster, it's more complex and pervasive. Therefore, so is the need to manage it effectively. So why should you care about managing changes effectively? Because we all have to behave differently. Significant changes in the workplace come in the form of organizational initiatives that aim to do three things usually: reduce cost, improve productivity, improve performance. So these projects mean changes to systems, to policies, structures, and tools. They don't happen organically. And so this is what I've been doing for the past decade. And it builds on the popular face-to-face workshops I used to run for some of the biggest companies. So for Newcrest, for Worley, for Fujitsu. And I've gotten feedback from industry leaders and also learning specialists from the best university in Australia. And I've methodically documented my IP into a blueprint that will help you accelerate change in your organization. So I'm talking about templates that have guided the largest mining, engineering, and technologies to drive change, practical exercises to engage stakeholders and win over the toughest critics, communication examples that can be adapted to your industry or niche, and tried and tested strategies to effectively story tell your vision. Those are the key elements. And imagine how that would impact your productivity, your profitability, and your performance. So it's a blended learning program.
So we spoke about the fact that there's companies out there that have failed, and you've mentioned that big one. I mean, you've got some projects that have succeeded, and you've basically taken those learnings and documented it.
Correct. In short and sharp video format.
So help me understand then, because this is in my head now. I'm going, well, business is changing, and you mentioned the universities that you've gone to. If business is changing so fast, and the Industrial Revolution's getting flicked away, and the Industrial Revolution being, in my eyes, people turning up to work 9 till 5, banging out emails for 8 hours a day, you know, with that Industrial Revolution mindset, go home. The weekend was invented for the Industrial Revolution. You spend 8 hours a day, 5 days a week in the factory. You got 2 days a week at home. And often in England, we didn't even see the sunlight until the weekend, because you're in the factory. You know, that's why grey disease and everyone got sick, mentally ill, because they didn't see the sun until the weekend, if they were lucky. So the point being that the business models are changing, and we're moving into the industrial era, or the the digital side of the business. So forget the Industrial Revolution, we're now moving to digital. What is that going to do to the way that the universities teach about change? Because it's changed. So you can't teach the Industrial Revolution model of change to the digital era. So how are you going to address that? How are you going to address that?
So people have now shorter attention spans. The acceleration of all things digital has happened, and it's all about real-time learning. So these are all elements that have to be considered when you're trying to influence changes in behavior. And that's why I've developed these short and sharp video series that will give you easily digestible chunks, and that actually helps with knowledge retention. So no one will want to sit through a boring ass 1 hour lecture anymore. Those days
No
are
one has
gone.
time. Gone.
Yeah, exactly. So the maximum amount is 8-9 minutes. And it's not just that, but if you sit and learn something in a classroom, after 30 days, 90% of what you learned will be gone. So it needs to be supported by practical exercises, self-reflection questions, and a peer group setting. So connecting with others that have done the course to talk about what you've learned, what you've applied, learning from what maybe hasn't worked from then. It needs to be a holistic approach rather than classroom-based.
It sounds, this for me sounds very suitable, like Udemy, like Coursera, like, I now consume stuff on my time when I want, rather than joining. I left school at 15, so I don't have any qualifications. My only qualifications are from.
You've got the PhD of life, Carl. That's more valuable than any bloody Ivy League education. So.
Well, I got a PhD. I'm poor, hungry, and determined. That's it. I've heard a few other acronyms for, but I'm not going to use them. But there's just so much value that comes out of being able to consume content really short and sharp like that. And I consume my books by Blinkist. I've even gone from Audible to Blinkist because just give me the bullet points. That's enough for me. And so I think what you're doing here is, it sounds like if I'm a CEO of a company and I've got some big major change about to happen, I'm going to want to make sure that I easily understand what needs to happen. So I think your market could be the CEOs of these people that are running the change programs as well, because you give them the short, sharp bullet points rather than the detail, and at least the CEOs then can be across what that change needs to look like.
And what they need to do, yes, it does. And what they need to do, there's actually a module specifically about change leadership. So what you need to do to actively sponsor a change in your organization, because often very senior people think, oh, I'll just show up at a town hall, I'll send a few emails, they'll know I support it. No, it needs to be consistent, active, and visible. There's actually 7 roles of a sponsor, and one exec might do a few of them. But the more senior you are, the less likely you are to ask for help, and the less likely people will offer you help as well in case they get their heads bitten off, right? People don't willingly give you feedback. So yes, there's a separate module specifically on change leadership.
Is there a lot of, I mean, it's a fascinating space for me, the whole change thing, but is there a lot of people that will like to just give you enough rope and let you hang yourself? In other words, they can see that you're about to make a mistake and don't say anything?
Yes, definitely. People are so scared nowadays. They're scared of speaking their minds. I mean, you and I have talked about this, as we're both quite active on LinkedIn. The number of likes and comments does not correlate to the impact you have on people. There are far more people that message behind the scenes. Or message, so.
Yeah, and I see that a lot, actually. In fact, some of the things just on that whole LinkedIn stuff, I mean, the vanity metrics absolutely mean nothing. No. I mean, I've had a post that had 2 likes, and I've had somebody message me in the background saying how they got moved by that one post that had 2 likes. So for me, it's always about the impact on the people.
Yes.
And I think that this whole change thing that we're going through is all about people, and it's about. I keep coming back to this cognitive power that everybody has, and the value inside a company is not necessarily, it is the data, but it's also the cognitive capital of the people, and how you actually extract that and use that for new business models that could be new revenue generating models. And I think if you look at, and I see this quite a lot in Australia, a lot of companies that think they're digital and they're just throwing some blockchain here and a bit of AI here. And they think, we're transforming. Well, that's not really transformation. But you tend to see that a lot of these companies are fooling themselves almost into thinking that they're ready to go. And I just don't think. I think that in Australia right now there are so many companies that are not ready for any form of transformation, and I think a lot of it comes down to the leadership who don't understand the difference between being in the digital era or what digital transformation is.
Oh my God. And a lot of them are still leading in a very old school way. So before this happened, it was, like you said, the Monday to Friday, clock in 9 to 5. And there's an acronym that I like, and it's TITO, TITO, time in the office, right? That's how they measured value, productivity, performance. But now everyone's at home. No one's in the office. It's a big paradigm shift. People that have been leading the same way for so long. It's now trust in the outcomes.
Yeah, how do they
Not
go
many
from
leaders do that.
so leadership is going to have to change clearly. So you go from that industrial revolution manager, because that's what you were. You were a manager in the factory. That mindset of turn up to work and don't talk while you're on the factory line. You know, and then you have a manager to make sure you're not talking and you're working. Now they've got to move to be a leader, and you've got to go and have empathy and understand how to motivate your teams remotely. How is that? How are these companies going to do that? How are they going to shift from that mindset to this new mindset? Because that's really the transformation, right?
Yeah, that is massive. Well, self-awareness is the first step, right? They need to be aware that what got them to where they are today is not going to get them to where they want to be tomorrow. And once they're aware of that and they want to do it, then it's a matter of, getting the knowledge. Like, what does good look like? Is there a role model that embodies that new way of leadership that they want to replicate? And it's a matter of learning, like any new skill, right? You have to start somewhere. You just have to make the first step. And I think accountability is a big part as well. So tell people this is what you're working on, right? Tell people that you're willing to change and you need their feedback on what good looks like. So a company and an MD that I've seen that did this really well was actually IBM. So a few years ago, I was at a conference and the MD of Australia and New Zealand stood up and actually, put his hand up and said, a few years ago, I got feedback that, hey, I was an asshole. Said it in front of 400 or 500 people, and he even showed his results, his 360-degree feedback results. And then he also showed every month it would get better and better. And he said he had to lead first. So it takes leaders like that to step up and acknowledge they're falling short, but then make the commitment to want to close that gap.
Yeah, well, there's another problem that's going to happen. I think, how do you teach an old dog new tricks? Well, that's going to be a bit of a challenge for a lot of the old leaders that are maybe a little bit more grey-haired and been around for a longer time to actually make that transition.
Yeah.
I often see companies like Afterpay, massive inspiration for me, because they're just they seem to be doing good because they have a policy of doing good internally. They have a do good culture. Nick and the team are big supporters of the Meet Magic stuff and the Meetings for Good campaign that we've got. And I just know internally they would be having multiple experiments happening at one time, because that's how change happens. You look at Facebook and Twitter and all those big companies that they would have thousands of little change programs happening at the same time, little experiments happening here and there. Whereas the companies that I think are going to fail, are going to literally hit the wall, are those companies that are not doing that. And that's a lot of these big companies that they might have a little incubating program going internally, but it's really not taking into consideration anything other than just a bit of blockchain here and a bit of AI there. So is that something you're going to see, that from a change perspective? Do you see that companies that have lots of different experiments happening more susceptible or more accepting of the change versus the ones that are traditional?
If they've got a culture of innovation, they are definitely more willing to try things, for sure. And the more established, well, generally speaking, the more established and entrenched a company is, the harder it is to shift, the harder it is because they've got more to lose, right? If you're a startup, you've got a low base and it's only up from here.
So where's your market? Is your market the big guys, or is it the mid markets, the ones that are flexible?
Well, for the program, it's applicable to any change, but historically, I've dealt with quite conservative, large organizations. Yeah. But these principles apply no matter, I've led change programs impacting up to 23,000 people across the 7 continents. And these principles apply whether you're in Melbourne or Mumbai or Manado.
Where the hell's Manado?
Exactly my point. It's Far East Indonesia.
I have no idea where it was. I think it's really amazing. I think it's really amazing what you've done, and people need they can do one of two things, right? This is, for me, I think what people need to do is start to consider their own career as their own startup, and this is what your mindset has to be, that you're going to now create something, work for yourself, because this is now the gig economy that we're moving into, right? And a lot of it's going to be a massive growing focus. So you need to learn to get good at doing something good. So if you've got a skill like what you've done with Change, you can turn that into a course that people
Turn
can
it into
pay.
a digital offering. Exactly. Yeah.
What an amazing thing, right? But more importantly, you're actually treating it like your own little startup. And you know for a fact, if you don't do a good job for somebody, they're not going to come back. So you're actually more inclined to do good and do a good job of delivering value to your clients because of that. Because you might get a referral, you might not get a referral. It might be a referral-based system. So you might all of a sudden find that there's 20 people that have given you a really positive response from those videos, and it's just it'll work. The point is you've got to treat your own little startup, your own little career as a startup now. How did you go about taking that?
I think we need to stop whinging about change resistance, because change is only going to happen faster, and instead we need to focus on building our change resilience, right? Because in the good old days, the best predictor of success supposedly was the IQ test, but IQ simply measures intelligence, and it may be enough to start a business, get a job and whatnot, but it's not enough. I mean, that's only the starting point. And then Daniel Goleman popularized EQ, popularized emotional intelligence, right? Knowing how to identify, monitor, and manage your emotions and other people's. That's also a critical part of being a well-rounded person and a great leader. But IQ and EQ are worth bugger all if you don't sharpen up your AQ, your adaptability quotient. So what's the point of knowing you should do something when you're not willing to change? So that's why I think AQ, your ability to change, is going to be the best predictor of future success.
Wow. Is it, I see business structures changing with shareholders driving wrong behavior. I mean, often you have shareholders that they're all capitalist driven, right? They're all looking about where's my dividend? Give me my dividend. So that behavior forces companies to not spend money, to not change, or just to basically make money.
It's exactly they're incentivized short term. So then, of course, their decision making is all based on short term time horizons.
So should the business structures change to actually affect change? Because there's one company I know, Rob Kaludis runs it, called Vivcourt Trading, and he doesn't have any shareholders. He has a charitable trust as the foundation, and he sat and told me the money comes into the trust, goes out, and then goes to the staff, comes in, goes out, and it's just this energy that's moving, but there's no shareholders literally putting the pressure on to cut costs here, save money here, do this. You can't save money to grow your business. It doesn't make sense. You can't stop the clock to save time. It doesn't make sense. You're either growing or you're dying. There's no in between. That's it.
Yeah.
And so I think when I see a lot of these companies that are still stuck in that old space, I think it's the shareholder behavior or shareholders that are driving that wrong behavior and stopping that transformation from happening. I can't help but think the models have to change dramatically.
Yeah. It's shareholders and also the leadership, Some of them can only just focus on cost and very, very concerned with meeting their SDIs, their short-term incentive bonus plans. So
yeah, well, that's half an hour. I think we've waffled on a bit too much. If there's no questions out there, but how do people get a hold of you? How do they how do people, if they want to log on to your course, what do they do? Where do they go to?
They can email me at hello@freshbyfriska.com. So my website is freshbyfriska.com. If they add me on LinkedIn, there's a link in my bio with the where you can access the course.
It's really exciting. I've watched the evolution of this come around. I've watched the evolution of your videos on LinkedIn.
You were there right from the beginning. Yes, because of you, I jumped in. So I have much to thank you for.
Totally was, and I've watched those videos just become more natural. And the biggest thing for me of you doing that was that you actually had the guts to jump in and do it, and not worry about failure, not worry about how other people are going to perceive you, and you just did it. And that's that's where the growth has come from.
Yeah.
It's really
I
quite.
was shit scared, but I know who's important to me and who's not, whose views matters.
Yeah.
And some random on the other side of the world does not matter. Yeah.
Well, I think even with these lives, even if there's 5 or 10 people watching, for me, it only takes one person to make a difference too. And if you're making a difference to one person, then that's it. That's a win. It's a huge win.
You're preaching to the choir.
Speaking of wins, this little old meat magic thing here this week. Oh my God, we had the chief economist of the ANZ Bank sign up. The chief economist, I mean, one of the most important men in the country, almost, has given us some time. So we are, as a team, we're very excited about where we're going. I had some conversations this morning about expanding into the US. So there's all sorts of great stuff happening. But I cannot wish anybody more success than you with your program, because I just want to see 10,000 people downloading this course. and do you know, your biggest challenge is going to be obscurity, nothing more. Because people don't know about you, because the content's bound to be good, bound to be valuable. How do you put your proverbial hand up in the air and say, we're over here, guys? And this is just the start of it, by the way. This will be it. This will be the start of people knowing, and I can't help but wish you success with it, because it's just a great idea.
Thank you. That means a lot.
Change management for the new world. That's what it is.
Yeah.
So, all right, I'm going to go now and make a cup of tea.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Enjoy this beautiful weather in Sydney, and do not bring your shitty Melbourne weather here.
Yes, sir.
We'll see you soon.
All right. See ya.
Bye. And we're done.